What's up, folks? Thanks for stopping by and taking your time out of your Saturday afternoon to hang out for a little bit. Matt was giving me a hard time for a little bit there. My Fish Tanks Aquatics, good afternoon to you, sir. Uh, uh, Fabulous day today. I'm currently located in Vinoxky. What's up, Zen Ginger? Welcome to the show. Here in Oklahoma. It's actually a beautiful day. Then again, we've had great weather all week long. Um, I've been here for 3 weeks now. It's been anywhere from mid 70s up into the upper 90s, but clear and a million every day. Generally speaking, makes it great weather to fly in. It's a large portion of why we come down here to do a lot of our training. Stephen P. 2003. Monster Fish Gal, Lori, thanks for stopping by. Uh, this will be, fairly short. I know it's Saturday. People have things to do, and I know that metalheads come on in about an hour. But there's something on Facebook that I saw last night, and it's something that we see all the time. Um, it just kind of every now and then you see something, and as somebody that creates content to try to help people, well, it's been a while. Thanks for stopping by. Uh, as a content creator that makes things to try to help people, every now and then, like I said, you see something that just kind of sparks, motivates you a little bit to try to create something or talk about things that could potentially not only help individual people, but also help the hobby as a whole. So today, as you can see from the title of the title of the stream is "How can we help others be successful?" or "How can we help others help us be successful in the aquarium hobby?" Because there are everybody wants to help, right? And everybody likes to help other folks out. But we've all got questions at some point in time about various topics. Maybe you're more knowledgeable about shrimp than the person next to you, or maybe somebody's just new into the hobby and they're just trying to get going. So you see people nonstop. There's a million Facebook groups out there. There's a bunch of YouTube videos. You see people asking questions all the time, and a lot of those questions are really um, very very simple. And it's easy to answer and short, but maybe by giving a short answer to a super simple, easy question, maybe isn't necessarily helping uh, the person that asked it, or helping anybody else really get a ton of information and a ton of experience from that interaction, right? So uh, the actual thread that comes to mind was a user posted a video, and it was a very simple tank, had fairly large gravel, a little bit bigger than pea gravel in the bottom of the substrate. It had obviously a light. He was injecting CO2. You can see the CO2 diffuser in the video, and then there were some very unhealthy plants. And the question was, what's wrong with my plants? And that was all that was really posed. So in the thread, a lot of people were asking questions like, what's your tank setup look like? What kind of plants do you have? What's your nutrient dosing regime or lack of, etc. Um, and this thread, like I said, such a basic question, uh, doesn't really lead to getting quality answers, right? So a bunch of people were asking questions. They asked about equipment setup, myself included, and somebody eventually made the comment that it looked like the original poster just went into this without any sort of plan at all, or uh, yeah, they just kind of they knew they needed light, they knew they needed CO2, or thought they wanted it. Um, so it was an interesting a thread as a whole. But at the end of it, the question that or the post that really caught my attention was somebody mentioned that it looked like they just had no game plan going into it. And that's extremely accurate. That's what happens. Um, so what they did, they were obviously not having success for a multitude of reasons, um, but largely because they simply didn't do any research at all. And somebody's like, it looks like you didn't have a game plan at all when you went into this. You just bought what you saw in people's tanks or what they sold you at the shop, and you just had no real knowledge or information behind it. And that was accurate. Um, so where can we start? Obviously, start by educating yourself. Have a game plan before you go to do as much research as possible. And that was one of my comments. Um, is that they needed to kind of go back to square one because it was obvious through this thread they hadn't really done any real research to find substantial information about planted tanks. Um, so I kind of I linked them to a couple sites where they could find some information. Um, and it said, well, you should go back to square one, do some quality research and understand. So you don't need to understand every little detail of the science behind planted tanks, but go back and understand some of the concepts so that you know a little bit about what's going on in your tank, other than, hey, I threw some plants in here and somebody said I need a bright light and some CO2. And their response, after me telling them they should maybe go back to square one and do some research, kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. And here's how it reads word for word. Mike, seems like a lot of work. Wouldn't it be easier to ask for advice from all the pros in this group? Isn't this what this group is for? And so this person thought that it's too much work to do your own research and do your own reading, or watch, a million videos, and they just want to throw something at a tank. And when they have a problem, just ask a question, be like, oh, hey, what's wrong with this? So what can we do to avoid this situation? Because obviously, like, if I'm trying to help somebody, and I'm not saying I'm the most helpful person in the world, but if there's somebody knowledgeable on a topic, and you ask them a question, you want them to help you. Like, so maybe you're new, you want somebody that's knowledgeable on a topic to help you. If you're too lazy to do your own research and you think that it's easier to just ask questions instead of actually doing a little bit of reading or watch some videos, why should, if I'm the person that wants to to help you, if you're too lazy to even do anything to help yourself? uh, so getting to the point of the stream, how can we help others help us be successful? uh, by educating yourself. Obviously you'll have a little bit broader. Part of that is, if you have, and I'm not saying there aren't any stupid questions. There are some that are easier than others, but there's not really stupid questions, right? And I'm not saying to not ask questions, but if you do the research and you put in the effort to find what you can and learn what you can to just kind of get a grasp on some basic concepts, then when you do run into a problem, you can say, hey, I understand that this is what I need to happen in this tank. I'm kind of at a loss. I understand, like, I've heard that maybe this is a result of a potassium deficiency. Um, choppy audio, Alishan says. And so in order to get better answers to your questions, instead of asking like simple questions because you were just too lazy to do the research, do a little bit of reading on your own. And you don't even have to read anymore these days. There's such a wide variety of options, as far as content, whether that's in the form of a blog, a book, some articles online, scholarly articles, or just public articles, as well as videos. There's a ton of videos on literally just about every topic out there. Um, so if you do a little bit of work on the front side to prepare yourself for a situation, and you show somebody that you put in the work, somebody that could potentially help you is going to give you a lot better answers. You're going to get higher quality responses because you showed them that hey, I did at least some work. Can you help me out, maybe with the fine tuning, right? And hand fed is exactly what this is. Um, and if you understand the concepts a little bit, you're able to ask a maybe a more specific question or a more intellectual type question, and you'll get higher quality responses. So a lot of the times in these groups, like this user on Facebook said, isn't that the point of these groups, is to ask and get advice from the professionals or the experts in the group? And yeah, that is the point of the group, is to share your experience and gather knowledge and be able to ask those questions. But generally speaking, if somebody that's a little more knowledgeable in the hobby, you don't see them digging into the threads of these simple, super basic questions that you could have solved yourself, with just a little research. In a planted thread, you're going to see people like Dennis Wong, Tom Barr, Greg Zierdek, Raj, uh, Vin Cuddy, any of those big names. You're going to see them get into the threads where somebody asks a specific and actual question that they thought about the question and built a solid question and presented it, in such a manner that would garner the attention of somebody that might be quite a bit well versed in the hobby or a bit more experience. So that's how we can easily, you know, help people help you, is to do the work up front. Don't be lazy. Don't expect people to hand feed you everything on a silver spoon, right? Uh, it drives me crazy when like I don't mind people asking questions. And like I said, this person asked a question, and then I poked a little bit and asked, for some clarification and details, and then for them to come back and say, "Well, it seems like a lot of work to do the research. Isn't that what these groups are for?" That's kind of, that mindset is obviously not going to lead to somebody being successful, right? People that are successful in this hobby are successful because they grind, right? They put in the effort, and that's the same thing with anything in life, not just like planted tanks. They're willing to do the research on the front side and grind away, and actually think about concepts and think about how things are happening and what's really going on in your tank. And I think that these days, back in the day, like internet forums were where we gathered and shared a lot of our information, right? So forums weren't instantaneous. Like generally speaking, you'd post a thread with a question, or you'd post a build thread, and maybe over the next 6 to 9 hours, you get a few responses, right? Um, so people kind of had that patience, and obviously, I think if you ask most people that are successful in this hobby, um, a little motivation and then patience are the big keys in being successful. So patience being a large part of it. And with the development of Facebook, and the ability to ask a question to literally hundreds of thousands of people all at once and get all these responses really fast, I mean, we get that gratification in our head, right? Like just human nature, we get the gratification like, hey, I made a post, whether it's asking a question or posting a picture, and all these people answered right away. So that kind of makes us feel important, or makes people feel like they care, right? Um, but if it's become such a crutch, right? So we can get instant answers. Maybe they're not the best answers, maybe they're not right answers, but we can get an instant answer from somebody else, and it feels like we're doing less work. But those answers that you're getting, so you may ask something really simple and basic, that you could have read in 2 seconds, or learned from a quality video really fast, really easy, and then had more of an understanding. The questions that people ask, like they ask them and they're like, oh, well, I don't need to read. I can ask this question and I can get 100 people to comment on it real quick and give me all these answers. But uh, while you may get some gratification out of that, you get this instant response, you get all these people that are potentially talking about it. The quality of those answers probably isn't going to be that great, right? And you may not even understand that answers. If you do the initial bit of learning, and if you do the initial bit of learning, then when somebody does explain an answer to you, you'll have a better chance of actually understanding what's going on in their answer, right? Because especially when you get into some of the planet tank stuff, some of the coral stuff, some water chemistry, it's easy to give somebody an answer that could maybe go over their head if they don't have a pretty sound understanding already. Um, so that's part of it, right? So how help others help ourselves? Don't be lazy. Have the motivation. If you want to be successful in anything, whether it's this hobby, whether it's working on cars, whether it's racing, whether it's mountain bikes, photography, whatever, I don't care what it is, be ambitious enough to do a little bit of research on the front side before you ask questions like, maybe that wasn't such a great question. And a lot of the times you'll get far better responses, and you'll actually yourself, since you have a little bit of understanding of what's going on already, you'll retain and you'll get more useful information out of that as well. Zen mentioned she doesn't like the asshats who just answer Google it. Um, I get that, and that's not conducive to progress either, right? So a lot of the times, if I see a question that maybe I feel didn't necessarily need to be asked, it could be found easily just with a quick read. And when I say quick reading, I mean like a lot of stuff is like 5 minutes of your time. That's it. So I'll drop, instead of answering a question, I'll just drop a link like, oh, hey, here's some really useful planet tank information. And that's what I did with this. Hey, I think you should go back to go on Facebook to get a little basic understanding of what you're actually trying to accomplish here. And that's when they came back with, well, that seems like a lot of work. So it's easy, right? It's this we can help each other help themselves, right? By not don't necessarily spoon speed people all the time, right? That's just going to encourage them to continue in their ways. But if you provide a link to where they can find information for their answer, hopefully they're ambitious enough to be like, oh, hey, thanks for the information. I'll go take a look at it. And then they can move on with that information a little bit better. A lot of the times, like I'll skim over a lot of questions because it's, and I'm not saying it's basic stuff, but I mean, it's like, yeah, that's kind of a question that could be answered a few different ways. Or um, but if somebody asks, like, if you have me really like, I don't know, just a super simple question without you yourself having put any thought process into it, um, I'll drop a link, and that'll probably be about the end of my involvement in that discussion, unless you come back with something fairly intelligent and something that's going to progress the conversation. If you're a brand new person and you're like, hey, I'm brand new, where can I find information about? Like, I will gladly jump in that thread and I will help all day long, because you're asking where you can do something to do your own work. And there's as much information as there is, excuse me, on Facebook and YouTube and the Googles. Not all of it's accurate. So I do try to steer. I will gladly put in the effort to try to steer somebody towards some quality information that'll really get them going in the right direction. So that's one way that we can help each other, right? Is if somebody asks to be spoon fed, don't fall into that. Just provide them a resource that they can use to find their answer, right? And that'll help uh, the community as a whole eventually build up a little bit. And June's right. There a lot of the times there are multiple answers um, that can be correct. So you don't have to rely on. Uh, there's not just one way to do things, and we see that a lot in this hobby where there's a lot of people like, you have to do it this way, and that's simply not true. You can have success in a lot of different ways, and success um, it varies from one person to the next, right? Like what I consider success in this hobby is not what Alishan's going to consider success in his tanks, or June or Big Shrimpin, right? So there can be multiple answers. There are a lot of wrong answers out there. There are certain ways that are wrong, and there's maybe a method isn't wrong, but maybe the information that somebody is providing is wrong, right? Or maybe they're providing some uh, just poor advice that, and by poor advice, I mean, well, the general consensus of the hobby is that that's probably not a great idea. So, Alishan, don't answer questions unless I have experience with the topic. Know nothing about keeping coral except what to read. So I want to give a definite answer. And that's true. That's one way that we can progress the hobby, right? If you aren't like people want to help. I mentioned this a minute ago. Like everybody wants to help each other, generally speaking. Um, but if you don't really know a solid factual answer and you're just kind of guessing at something, maybe just leave it be because throwing just closing your eyes and blindly throwing a dart and trying to help somebody um, is less helpful than maybe you think. While you have good intentions, you want to help them. Just blindly throwing out random advice because you aren't really well versed on that topic is detrimental. That user on the receiving end of it may be like, oh well, this guy, I don't know him. He may be right. He may not be. I'm going to follow this, and now you've got two people just doing random stuff. So it's not helpful to the hobby. And there's times where you may find a question that perhaps, like Alishan said, you don't have experience with, um, but you could point them in the right direction. Like if you don't have a solid answer for that, uh, point them in the right direction or suggest, hey, I would ask. So if there's somebody that asks, well, I've got these shell dwellers, and maybe I'm not super versed on shell dwellers. I'm like, why don't you go talk to Anthony at Staten Island Cichlids, and he'll point you in the right direction. Or if it's something about, we'll say, breeding of pistos, like, oh, well, Ted Judy is a great guy at breeding of pistos. That's who I would go talk to. So point them in the right direction. So that's my kind of 2 cents on um, that, I guess. So, da, 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 da. My first LFS gave me wrong answers all the time. He just didn't know, so he made the best guess with what he knew. Yeah, and that's dangerous, right? That's really dangerous. You can't just be throwing your best guess at things, right? Eventually, it's going to lead to a lack of credibility in yourself, right? Word will get out that, wow, Mike continuously gives really shitty advice, and the things that he says are true just aren't true, and then you're going to just damage your own credibility, and then nobody's going to want to talk to you because, well, you always give misinformation or bad advice. So if I ever do that, please let me know. Like I said, there's certain methods that you can do, and one method may or may not be, lead to better success than the other. But you can still reach success with different techniques and different approaches to do things. So um, I caution you to even though one person may say this is the way, there's generally in our hobby multiple ways around it. So those are a couple things that we can do to enhance ourselves, or enhance our own success, and improve our improve our odds for our own success. And by improving our own success, we're also improving the community as a whole. Because there's a lot of the real basic information out there, and you see a million questions over and over again, and it fills up and clutters Facebook groups, and it clutters forums. And like I said, I'm not saying don't ask questions. It's great to spark conversations, but if we can avoid this stupid, repetitive question, like I'm not saying the questions are stupid, the stupidly repetitive questions that you see over and over and over again, people are just going to scroll. Like they see that stuff in a Facebook group and they scroll through it and like, this is all the same stuff over and over again. It's like if we ourselves, like as individual hobbyists, we take the we motivate ourselves and go find some of those answers on our own, then when we do find a topic or a thread, asking a question or spurring some conversation in a Facebook group, it should be of higher quality, right? And it'll be something a little bit more intriguing and interesting to folks. And by having more frequently having those mid to high level conversations, everybody gets something out of that. If somebody asks, why are my nitrates 20, whatever, like people see that thread a million freaking times, right? And if somebody reads that thread, they're not going to get any new useful information out of it. Whereas if you ask a specific detailed question, while it might not affect as many people, it's going to be more interesting conversation. There'll be a lot more likely to have a more um, higher level type of posts in there where everybody can actually learn something a little bit out of it instead of seeing the same thing over and over again. It is awful. It is really bad, and the search function doesn't work well. Um, like back in the day when forums were popular, the search function was actually fairly useful because you could find that information easily. But often I see, even in like Facebook groups now, people are just they're lazy. They want that instant gratification of like people answering them right now. So they don't even attempt to use the search function, or they don't read the files section. Some of the groups actually have a really awesome collection of files, of write-ups and databases or spreadsheets that people have compiled and gone through a lot of effort to put together, and people don't even utilize them, um, which is quite unfortunate because one, a lot of those questions can be solved by looking at something like the files, or searching real quick. Instead, the Facebook search feature stinks, but it can find some of the answers that you're looking for. uh, that's a classic, Stephen. See that stuff like that all the time. Um, and when you do have a situation like this, going back to how can we help others help us, right? Instead of saying, "What's up, IHSP? Hope you're having a good day." If you have a situation where you have a problem in your tank, like I said, if you did your basic research, you'll know what to expect, or kind of have a decent idea of it, and you'll know what those actual water tests mean. Um, but instead of saying my water's perfect, well, you tested the water, you don't know what those numbers mean. So I have a basic understanding of what you're actually testing, and what those numbers mean, because I see all the time people like post like, all right, these are my test results. And then they have no idea what those test results actually mean, right? Uh, so just by doing a little bit of reading, or watching a couple really useful videos, um, you can easily understand what most of those tests mean, and why we test for them, and how those the parameters that we're testing actually affect your tank. Um, but don't just say, "Well, my fish is sick, whatever. My water's perfect." Okay, well, if you know your water's perfect, then post your test results, because 9 times out of 10, when you find a "what's wrong with my fish" or "what's wrong with my tank" thread, people are always asking for the water parameters, and the original poster was like, "Oh, they're fine. It's correct. They're perfect. Whatever." Like, help yourself out and help everybody help you. If you have a problem with your tank, post as many details about your tank as possible: size, occupants, water quality. So that includes those parameters. If you have the ability to test for something and you're going to say, "My water's fine, my water's perfect, I test my water," whatever, just post the test results. It's going to save a bunch of people from asking you, "Well, what are your water parameters?" And then you see people, the next thread you see is, uh, "Everybody in here doesn't read the thread. I posted that my water was fine, but I had this problem, and then everybody just asked what the parameters were, and I said the water was fine." Well, if they're asking exactly what the water parameters are, they're asking for a reason. And then they'll come back with, "Well, I have 15 tanks, so I know what I'm doing. I know my water's perfect." Well, that doesn't tell us anything about the water conditions for the fish that you're in. By you saying the water's fine or the water's perfect, um, a lot of those times, those threads end up in, "Oh, well, I didn't know that that's what this meant," or, "Oh, I didn't know that this parameter was that important." Um, so it's easy. I think it's easy stuff to do, guys. Just, I said, uh, patience and motivation. Do a little thinking for yourself, and do a little research on your own, and you can, really not only, like I said, help yourself and help others, but you're promoting the hobby as a whole. You're promoting a little bit more in-depth discussion, and you just don't be lazy. Don't be lazy, please. It's success is not for lazy people. And I'm not saying I'm the most ambitious person all the time, right? Nor am I saying I'm the most successful. Like Steve, like these people. If you look at Jenna, so she's gotten into doing aquascaping, and I'm sure she's done a little bit of, looking at different techniques and looking at a bunch of different tanks, finding what she likes, finding what she doesn't like, and then she puts forth the effort to go to these competitions like the Clash or like AGA or like anywhere else that they may have an aquascaping competition, and she puts in the motivation to compete, and she doesn't go and just expect to win, and doesn't go and expect people to tell her how to win, right? She like looks at other people's techniques and takes in things and adds her own twist to it, and then she's become very successful. Da-da-da-da-da. Right, Steph. That's a lot of it. So your parameters may be fine based on what general parameters are like considered acceptable, uh, but maybe what parameters are fine in general, like 0, 0, 20, whatever. Uh, those that might be okay for a lot of fish, but maybe it's not great for your fish, right? So definitely. So I don't usually test my tanks. I usually eyeball it, but I don't, knock on wood, haven't had any major problems in a while that I've really had to dig down in deep for to try to find the cause. Um, but go ahead and test and have parameters ready and post those up with your question. If you make a video like, hey, this is my tank, this is what it looks like, this is my setup, these are the parameters I tested, and these were the results, and then somebody can actually help you out. Don't expect people to give you quality answers if you just post a picture of a fish and say, hey, what's wrong with this fish, right? So ask solid questions, be specific about it. Definitely, Steph. Yeah, definitely. I agree completely. So I didn't mean to rant, and originally, like, I kind of got a little bit irked when I read that response and just saw that guy's mentality about it. Um, and I kind of wanted to rant about it initially, and I tried to think of a way to be a little bit more productive. So hopefully, the last 20 minutes or so haven't come across as just me ranting. Trying to encourage people to take a little initiative and help move the hobby in a good direction, because the trends based on Facebook, and I'm not, Facebook can be a blessing and a curse, right? It can be absolutely terrible. Um, but if it's a good place to go to read some discussions, because you get into some of the uh, more like a higher level type groups, and there's some really interesting discussions, but there's no reason that we can't bring similar discussions about concepts and understanding and some higher level thinking into any Facebook group, really, right? So there shouldn't be like this divide, like, oh, well, this is the elitist Facebook group, or oh, this is for the newbies. There's no reason we cannot have all that interaction in the same group. But a lot of the times, because you see the same repetitive, like really simple questions over and over in some of the groups, uh, a lot of the more experienced users is like, I don't feel like dealing with it anymore. These people, it's just a bunch of lazy people that want me to give them the answer. So they kind of go and they spend their time in some of the higher level groups, right? That are more specific and generally, I'm not talking bad or trying to downplay anything, but a little more advanced. So, what's up, Mel? Hope you're having a good one. And along those lines, surround yourself with knowledgeable people, right? Join a club. Whether that's a lot of the clubs nowadays are largely online, but they have their own forum. Join a club where those people actually meet up and get together to share their experience and share their knowledge. Turns out when you have to meet somebody in person, you're a lot more inclined to give them uh, quality information and better advice, right? So if you don't have to see Joe Blow because he's just some dude on the internet, you never actually have to meet him in person. You have no problem giving him bad advice, because you're not going to feel bad if, like, oh, I gave him this advice and his fish died up. Well, I don't know. Get into a club and establish those personal connections. And if it's not a local club, get into find an actual group of people that do meet up occasionally. It doesn't have to be a local club where you see them once a month. Look at some of the people. Like there's a huge group of FishFam type folks from the YouTube scene that all got together at the Keystone Clash, and find people that'll hold you accountable, and you can make those lifelong friendships with, and actually make connections, and not just be talking to random people online. Because like I said, you will get better information out of it, and not only like the information aspect, but you just build these relationships that just help you be successful at a completely different level. Oh boy. Well, give a few minutes. If you guys have any questions or comments, like if you have gripes and moans and or counterpoints to anything I've said, please don't be afraid to uh, pop a comment in the chat, and let's talk about it. If you think I'm out of line, or if you disagree with something I said, let's discuss it a little bit and see where we can go. It's okay to be critical of each other, right? So if there's information that I've given, or something that I've said that you think, hey, that's not conducive for the progress of the hobby, um, because it's just not accurate, or maybe you think I'm being grouchy, don't be afraid to call me out, and let's discuss it. Hold me accountable, right? And that's one of the things that we can do to help each other be better, and build a hobby as a whole, is hold people accountable. Uh, I would hope that the friends that I've made, I'd hope that the friends that I've made, and the people that I've made connections with throughout the hobby would hold me accountable if I was doing something that was, you know, uh, ill-advised, or if I was giving out, misinformation, or just crappy advice. Like, hey, what you said is bullcrap. And let's talk about it. And I'll say, well, why do you think that? Or if you disagree, like, it's okay to disagree and have those conversations. A lot of the times, I see a bunch of people like in a forum type setting or a Facebook page, and they're so afraid uh, of a disagreement. But a disagreement isn't always bad, right? A disagreement can lead to some really intellectual discussion that everybody can learn from, whether it's a disagreement between techniques, or maybe there's a disagreement where somebody simply had, some initial misinformation to begin with, and don't be an asshole about it, obviously, but call them out and be like, hey, I disagree with what you said. I think that information's inaccurate, and here's why, and be able to provide something that supports your side of the discussion, and things will move in a positive direction after that. A lot of the a lot of Facebook groups I see, they're so afraid to upset some of the people in the group, that they don't want you to disagree with anything, even if like there is some information that's legitimately wrong, or some advice that's just absolutely god awful. Like 99% of the hobby would say that is garbage, and you should not do that because it has these detrimental effects, and this is why it's a terrible idea. But as soon as you call somebody out on it, or say, hey, what you said is wrong, here's the correct information, some of the moderators in these groups get their panties in a bunch, and next thing you know, they're kicking people out just for trying to put the kibosh on somebody that's spreading garbage information. So, um, and you'll notice that a lot of this conversation is centered around Facebook, and Facebook doesn't have to be a bad place, right? As far as information, whatnot goes. I utilize Facebook because you can reach a lot of people, and you can make connections with so many different folks across literally different platforms and different countries. There's fish and plant people that I talk to from Europe. There's fish and plant people that I've met and actively talked to from South Africa, and there's people from Singapore that I've met and I still talk to occasionally. So Facebook can be a great platform, and offers us a lot of opportunities to meet those people and share that information and share our experiences, and to get help. Um, so it doesn't have to be so negative. And I'm not trying to be negative about it. I'm just using it as an example of where I see uh, sort of situations pop up the most, right? I mean, you used to see it some on the forums when forums were more of a big deal. Um, Unfortunately, in my opinion, because I love forums. Forums have kind of gone by the wayside because of different venues of communicating, such as Facebook or um, band. Seems like it. I don't know. I was band seemed like it could have taken off to be used for more informational uses. Unfortunately, I think it seems like in our community, at least, band has more or less just taken off to sell stuff, which is fine. I have no problem with that. Uh, but there, like I said, I'm just focusing and mentioning Facebook a lot because this is generally where you see that type of activity. Robert, hope you're doing well. Vibes, thanks for the plug. I hope this conversation, we'll give it a few more minutes here, and then we'll head over to Metalhead stream and show them some love. I hope you guys have been able to, um, maybe this is, got you to think a little bit differently about something and maybe agree, maybe disagree. Either way, let me know if you agree with what I'm saying or have comments about it. The chat's been fairly quiet. I've been rambling a lot, um, but speak up. Don't be shy. Uh, I'm not going to yell at you too loud. I'm going to go out and grab some links here, and we'll hang out for a little bit longer, and then we're going to go over and bug these fine people over here. So just drop the link for Metalhead Saturday Mayhem stream. Always a fun time. We'll go over there and get rowdy. Um, I just wanted to take some time, and I appreciate you guys allowing me to take some of the time out of your day to talk about, uh, it's not necessarily fish specific. And like I said, I feel like this advice applies to not just our hobby, but life in general and a lot of life skills. Ah, that's what I've heard, Stephen. So Stephen mentioned that the tech PC gaming type community has a lot of egocentric moderators. Um, that's one of the reasons that I no longer use planettank.net a whole lot because there's some super smart people on that forum. Unfortunately, some of their moderators like to run rampant. So I'll browse it. I don't get too involved in much of it anymore. But I've heard like the PC gaming community um, can be a little not friendly at times. So I was talking to God, who was I talking to? Oh, my um, a guy that I work with here used to be a little bit more involved in gaming, and he said that community will literally just they'll tear each other up, and that's not obviously not what we want to see in any community, let alone our community here in the aquarium world. So my fish tank, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it, and like I said, I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day. Um, there's a lot of things that you can lose and get back in your life, but time's not one of them. So enjoy the time that you've got. I appreciate you tuning in and let me know that, hey, you think that my opinions or some of the things I'm talking about are at least halfway interesting enough to give me some of your time, and hopefully together as a whole we can not only just build this community but build this community um, and improve things and continue to excel, um, and like I said, hold each other accountable, help each other get better, and hold a higher standard. Uh, Once again, thanks. Let's roll over to Saturday Mayhem with Metalhead. I'll drop that link in the chat one more time, and I will pin that up top. Oops, so that you guys can head over there and let's go have some fun. Get your hands wet, stay in your tanks, keep on grinding, be motivated, be ambitious, strive for success, put in the work to do what it takes. And as always, this has been Mike at All Things Fish. Thanks for tuning in.